So we're going to move on to our episode 7 and 8 reactions to The Last of Us on HBO. Here's the stinger. We'll be back in just a sec. There
You're
we
hilarious.
are. We're back.
I think it's so funny.
They're super scary. They came out of nowhere. They got us.
Oh no.
We're infected.
They're gonna eat us.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to episodes 7 and 8. Now, I'm very curious to hear what you guys think about 7, because I have a feeling I'm kind of got an unpopular opinion about this episode.
Every opinion you have is unpopular, Chaz.
You're unpopular, Chaz.
No. So go ahead. What did you guys think of 7?
I'll go first.
You go first, Metal.
Yeah, I was gonna go first since I'm the guy who hasn't played the game. 7 was the one where
7 is the one between Ellie and her. Oh, I don't have.
Oh
Riley.
yeah, her
Riley.
her backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought the whole thing was very interesting. It's nice to see a little bit of backstory with the girl, just to see like where she came from and stuff. So that's kind of nice to see that, and how like Fedra would treat her and things of that nature. Whether it's in the game or not, that's a different story. I think they said at the end that a lot of it was not a part of it. I think, but I'm not. Is it? Yeah. Okay. We'll go into that. So, I thought it was really neat. I thought it was really cool. I personally, for me, it was fun to watch, just to see what was going on and how she got bit. But it still didn't answer what happened and why didn't she get infected.
Well, if you're waiting for that answer,
That's
you'll be
forever.
waiting a long time.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
sorry.
And that's sad because it's like, she obviously got
I don't
bit.
feel like that's an important answer.
That's
though.
really not the point of the show, though. Like, okay,
Right.
she's immune, but that's really not the point.
But as a viewer, like, you think about it, it's just like, these are the questions that pop up when you watch something like this.
That's something interesting to think about because, that was never even in my mind. I never cared about why she was immune because, like, when you play the game, that's never on the forefront. It's about the world they're in. It's not about the circumstance of her could save the world, could not save the world. It's just how crappy the world is.
She's the queen. She's the queen of clickers. That's why she's immune.
Sure, that's it.
Whatever.
So just to kind of, since you were not sure if this was part of the game, it was as DLC.
DLC. Yeah.
And that's why this is kind of interesting because at first I wasn't super excited about this. Hey, you're drinking my vitamin water. That's my favorite. Because like when I played the game the first time, this of course wasn't in there. This was something that came after the fact as like a standalone DLC deal. So it never felt like this major important component to me. But as I was watching it this time, and I'm thinking, okay, as a TV viewer, this seemed a lot more relevant because the way they've been building up the characters and the rationale for why she feels the way she does about losing people or giving her the insight of, how she got bit and the circumstances around it. I think this is important context for at least for the TV show and the way they're laying things out. For the game, I didn't feel like I missed it the first time playing through it. It was a nice thing to have after the fact, but I definitely think this has a lot more weight for a TV viewer. At least that's how I'm kind of looking at it now. You guys can say otherwise since you're, once again, didn't play the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, you kind of figure out, it's nice to see a little bit of something behind the way she is. And then, like, later on in the next episode, obviously, it's like there's even more going on. But in this case, it's just really, you're already getting connected with a character. You want to know more about that character.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, that's almost like a filler episode, it feels like.
Yeah.
In my opinion. It's like, okay, well, you're doing all this, and this guy's freaking bleeding to death from being stabbed. But at the same time, it's like,
Well, it's
oh
not like
well,
it was
let's see
happening at
how
the
she
same
is.
time. So it's not like she was just
Exactly.
like
I
sitting in the
know.
corner just reminiscing. I remember the day while Joel's just spurting blood over there.
Yeah.
So
But it's just interesting, as like I said, as a viewer, to see how it is.
Mhm.
mhm.
So it's actually kind of nice to see that.
I liked seeing them like engage with everything in the mall. Like that was super
Yeah.
fun and very
That
much
was really neat.
entertaining. Mhm.
So there is one change to that. I saw. I know Kotaku had an article about this, which I'll tell you, I think Kotaku's having a lot of bad takes, but maybe that's just me. So
Since Jason
there's
Schreier left, they've been down the toilet.
that.
Or maybe
you know,
he
we should have
left
a whole
'cause he
topic
knew.
about Kotaku one day.
Oh, we should.
Oh boy.
Anyway, so there's one big change they made.
You should apply at Kotaku.
There you go. Not
Do it.
There
me.
you go.
Metal, you do it.
Oh boy.
It sounds like
Anyways,
anyone can get a
what's the
job
point?
there nowadays.
It feels like it. It's the same guy with a bad opinion.
I know.
If there's any Kotaku writers out there, I'm sorry. I'm not
we're
trying to come
sorry.
down
We
on
love
you.
you. Please watch.
Well, maybe Chaz loves you. Anyways, so they had this point being, or let me rephrase, the moment where they play Mortal Kombat. That's not in the game. Not technically. For one,
Which-
they didn't have.
From what I understand, those cabinets should not have been functioning after 20 years, from what I understand.
Well, that's.
Apparently,
I mean,
those things go
probably
bad
not.
without proper maintenance after like a couple of years. Apparently,
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like a perfect world scenario, and that's not exactly my issue in the game.
no, I'm being annoying.
And be Mortal
you-
Kombat 2 on top of all that.
No.
What's wrong with Mortal Kombat 2?
Well, I'm just saying it had to be Mortal Kombat 2 that they were playing
Of course.
in the middle of everything.
Couldn't have been
Anyway.
the Sub-Zero game or whatever that PlayStation 1 was.
Okay,
Oh,
my
the
point being, man, you
methodologies?
guys,
Yeah.
you guys are messing with me. So I'm curious to what your opinion is going to be. So in the game, they didn't have an actual working arcade machine. They found an arcade cabinet. It did not work. It wasn't Mortal Kombat. It was just some random in-universe game.
So that one was realistic.
Huh?
So the game was realistic.
Man, you guys keep messing with my brain.
Cordyceps fight.
Yeah. No, it's some random game. It was like Mortal Kombat, and they go up to it. Ellie's really disappointed that, oh, no, this game's not working. And Riley's like, no, you can still play it. And she has Ellie stand in front of the cabinet, close her eyes, and imagine the game playing. And Riley, like, talks her through the interactions, like, and then this enemy throws this punch, and then you do this. And, like, when you're playing the game, it zooms in on Ellie's face, like, as if you're watching
See,
her
that
from
sounds
the
way
arcade cabinet.
cooler.
And it has like some little UI elements that pop up. And she's imagining the game kind of take place. So I'm curious if you guys think that would have been a better type of way to introduce that scene, or if you liked the Mortal Kombat scene.
So what you just described sounds way cooler than what I saw.
It would have been unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not as much
That
of a
would've
hot
been-
take
that
as I
would've
was
been
coming
a-
across.
That would have been a very interesting way of going.
Interesting. See, I kind of like the Mortal Kombat scene. I don't know, something about that. Maybe it's because it made me feel like I was a kid again, 90s, playing Mortal Kombat. Like, I think I connected to that a little more. And I think that might be what they were going for, trying to make that moment a little more accessible to anybody else who's maybe been a kid in the 90s in the mall playing Mortal Kombat.
It was also kind of though unrealistic though, because like you're in
The whole thing was unrealistic.
you're in a
though.
you're in a post-apocalyptic world with monsters everywhere, and they have like all of the lights on. They have all of the music on, everything blaring, and it's like,
They're stupid kids, though.
I know.
What bothered me the most was, hey, here is everything that's on, and you can hear it, and it's freaking bright as hell on the inside. Get the hell out of here! That no one can tell that this place is on.
yeah.
Like, no, nobody noticed that. Like nobody really. I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah, I think it's a nitpick, but I agree.
It just kind of bothered me.
Okay, so
And the glass not giving out while they were standing on it.
That bothered
that
me.
Really,
I thought that
drove
was
me
coming.
nuts.
I thought they were going to, like, crash through it and someone could get sliced up.
Man.
Which was not in the game, but...
Get the hell out of here, man. No one could stand on one of those things and expect it to hold that kind of weight.
And the way they were dancing on it, no.
Yeah.
So I won a lot of matches of Snap while this episode was going on.
You were that bored?
I was bored by this episode. Now, granted, I went in knowing, or I I think afterwards I found out this was a DLC episode, and for me, kind of finding that out made me appreciate the episode slightly more. Like, I get the episode. I get what it's conveying, what it's getting across. You know, you're getting backstory. You're getting, you're seeing why Ellie is the way she is, and that I appreciate. I do think it is an important DLC or episode for the show. Like, it is important. For me, I thought it was kind of boring, and from the way Phoenix was talking about it, I do see how it could have been far more engaging if it was in a video game format, whereas as they're taking part in all of these different fun things they're doing, if there's more like QTEs, or if there's mini games, or if you're the one controlling them do these things, I could very much see it being, like I said, more engaging. Whereas, like, kind of just seeing them do these things, I was thinking about Marvel Snap the whole time. But again, I didn't think it was awful, but like, I was definitely a bit bored by this episode. Do you guys think that's wrong?
No, I get that.
No,
I mean,
I get it.
It's hard for me to feel if I would have been bored or excited, because I kind of knew exactly what was coming. And this episode played it real safe in that regard. Like, the other episodes they played it pretty close to how it was in the game, but they always kind of took a little bit of a deviation here and there. So I was always like, oh, so that's what they're doing. They didn't do that at all in this. Besides that little Mortal Kombat change, this was the DLC, like, verbatim, pretty much. And I don't know if that's necessarily made it more boring for me, but I definitely was sitting there like, yep, so that's about to happen. Yep, that's about to happen. So I definitely felt a little less engaged or in the moment. I don't know.
And I like the imagery of, like, Mortal Kombat, kind of like, how brutal and, awful Mortal Kombat is. And it's kind of like a depiction in a way of their kind of world that they live in. Like, I kind of like that. I mean, you said it wasn't Mortal Kombat, it was a different game?
It was some made-up game just in universe. I don't remember what it was, but it was like a Mortal Kombat. It was just, I don't know if they didn't have the licensing then to reference Mortal Kombat in the actual game. Now they do.
Mm-hmm. And part of me kind of liked that they didn't kind of show exactly what happens afterwards, even though, I mean, you can kind of gauge what happened after the biting. Mm-hmm. But maybe that's something I don't know. There's only one episode left, so I don't see how they can come back to that.
They won't touch base on it. I don't even remember if in the game they touched base on it. Like, I'm trying to think about it. It's been a long time since I've played the DLC.
Well,
but I don't remember if it was like Ellie. Because here's the thing: Ellie doesn't change, but Riley did, and you assume they were in the same place at the same time. So, did Ellie have to put down Riley? Did Ellie leave Riley?
Because I remember earlier in the season, Joel tells Ellie that he's done terrible things and killed people, and Ellie's like, I've killed people as well. So there is kind of inferred that, like, she has killed one person up to this point, and I think you can infer it's probably her friend,
Possibly. Yeah, I honestly can't recall, but I do like that they didn't even go that route to leave it a little ambiguous. I think it was a good choice there.
I like that too. Yeah.
And also it left the humanity in Riley and her. Like, if they would have shown Riley change, it just, it sucks humanity out. And then we look at Riley as something different. We never then see Riley as a monster. She's always this life that was lost now. And I think that's kind of important. If they would have shown her do the change, just you as a viewer see that as like, oh, that's not Riley anymore. That's XYZ monster. It just kind of changes the context or perspective a little bit. So, no, I like that they left it ambiguous.
Yeah, that's basically all I had for the notes. Now, I think what made this episode kind of particularly boring for me is the fact of what was happening in current time, as opposed to, like, because, like, to me that's where the real intrigue is. Which I guess, do you guys want to move on to episode 8? Just move right in.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on that, because I think this is the thing where our backgrounds are giving us different perspectives. Like, I don't feel that way because I know exactly where it's going. So I think you guys, since maybe you haven't played the game, you don't know exactly where the story is going or what the next thing is, you might be anticipating it a little bit more. I'm anticipating it, but not like what's going to happen next. It's like, oh, this is about to happen. So I'm not feeling the urge. Like, I didn't care about immediately getting back to Joel's story yet, because I know what's going to happen to Joel. So I think that's just an interesting kind of take. Like, somebody who hasn't played the game with no knowledge of what's going on, you probably would be more invested in what's going on with Joel back in that basement, and that may have dragged this episode down a little bit. For me, I was just like, well, I'm okay kind of putting Joel on the shelf for a minute, because I know the next thing that's about to happen to him. I'm okay taking this little, diversion.
I think you hit it like pretty much on the head. Yeah, I think that's like the intrigue of what's happening in modern and current time. I definitely think kind of brings down that, and maybe this episode, like you said in the game, if it's DLC, that means you play it later after you finish the main story. Like, I could see how that would be enjoyable, as opposed to having this in between those two episodes.
So, I could be wrong on this, because when I played through it, it came out late, so I had to play after I had already beaten the game.
I see.
Then I watched somebody do a Let's Play, and I think it happens right here. Like, at the same spot in the game, they inserted it into the story. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but that sounds right to me.
It's interesting, because I would think it fits better outside, but I don't know.
Honestly, I felt like when it happened after I beat the game, I cared about it far less.
Really?
Because the game was already done. And honestly, the reveals that come in just the main story overshadow any of the Riley stuff. Not that the Riley stuff isn't still interesting, good background, etc., but I didn't feel the weight of it nearly as much. Like, I think now is, like, before you get to the end of the show, now is the time to go through this Riley stuff. I think that was actually a good call. If they would have waited and dropped this after the ending, man, I don't think this would have landed, like, at all. At least not the same way.
Mm-hmm.
At least for a TV viewer. Like, a gamer may have felt differently, because you engage with it differently.
Fair enough. Overall...
let's move on to the next episode.
Overall, not a bad episode. It may have been the first episode so far that I was a bit not engaged with, but I don't know, that may have just been me. But yes, so this is going to move us on into episode 8 now. This is where, in my opinion, it gets good. I really enjoyed this episode. What did you guys think? Did you guys like this one as much as I did? I really enjoyed this one.
I guess I'll go first, because I didn't play the game.
Well, me neither. I haven't gotten this far in the game.
I thought it was really good. I thought it got really intense really fast. Yeah. And what was cool about it is that
David's
psychopath. What was interesting was that, like, I know that you control Ellie in the game. That's the one thing that they did mention, and of course there's certain things that change, like, instead of a cleaver, it was a machete, something really crazy nonsense under the table. The context that they made this guy look like he was some sort of, like, savior, went from, like, a God-fearing man to a freaking psychopath person.
Well, that's why he was so much of a psychopath. He was using whatever he thought would...
God.
Well, from what I understand in the game, though, the religion aspect is not in the game, from what I understand.
Oh, that's right.
From what I understand, he's just like a leader, or,
he's a cult leader.
Yeah, basically, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Phoenix knows.
I want you guys to talk this whole thing out before I add, because I have a very different feel about this.
Really?
Yeah? Okay.
Well, from my understanding...
Yeah, go ahead.
From what I understand from the podcast I've listened to, people that played the game liked this episode much less than people who haven't. Because I feel like, from what I understand, they kind of neutered David a little bit here. People said that he was much more convincing.
More violent?
No, they said he was more convincing, and he was... I don't know. I guess he gets friendly. He's more friendly with Ellie right off the bat, and... I don't know. I'll let Phoenix...
More manipulative.
I won't go too far. Again, I haven't played it. I'm just from what I've heard people talk about. But I really enjoyed the episode. I mean, I felt like David was... I guess if you guys also don't know the friend of David, what was... Oh, gosh, Troy Baker. Troy Baker voiced Joel in the game. Joel. Mm-hmm. He was in this episode. I don't know. Let's let Phoenix take it on. I want to hear Phoenix.
Hold on. Well,
give all your thoughts first, because as soon as I start talking, it's gonna.
Yeah,
I'm worried to change the context.
Because I know there's like, okay, so towards the end, I mean, everything's on fire or whatever, what have you. He's about to like, he does things like the guy's about to rape the girl on the
in a burning building. Yeah,
in a fire because he's like all like turned on by everything, and he's getting trying to get beat up, and then you find all these like dead bodies in the shed, and it's I should say preserved. Like it's like wow, this is getting really interesting. And I like the fact that they threw the beginning hint of the ear on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, wait, what? What the hell is this? It's
well, from what I understand, also is at the very beginning of the episode when the girl is like, "When can we bury my father?"
Yeah.
Eating her dad.
Oh, we'll wait till springtime.
Yeah, Dad's gone completely.
Yeah,
that's why I spend so much time watching them all eat.
Yeah, it's the chili, man. I'm telling you, it's all in the chili. Mm-hmm. Come on, Cartman knows all about that. I am
kind of disappointed there was no...
It's got Teneman's tears.
Oh, it's Teneman's tears.
I'm kind of disappointed with this episode at the end. There wasn't more follow-up with that. Like, you don't really get to, like, see the townspeople realize what they've been doing this whole time. It kind of just abruptly cuts away, and it's like, oh, they're gone. We don't find out. No one finds out.
Where were all the townspeople at the end? Like, there's a building burning down in the middle of their town that apparently they all frequent. Where'd they all go?
Yeah, the writing...
it's funny.
It's rushed definitely towards the end.
Yeah. I think that those people were just... they didn't care what was going on. And you can kind of tell in the very, like, early on, like, those people were... There was something wrong with those people. Like, completely something wrong with all of them. Every time this guy spoke... It was like, yo, keep quiet or else he's going to eat you too. Like...
Well, from what I understand, the townspeople didn't know what was happening, even though, like...
Well, they were sucked into, essentially, like, a cult. And, like, you don't... Cults, I mean, sometimes you follow by fear, sometimes you follow by devotion, and it seemed like a lot of them were probably doing it for necessity and fear more than anything else, because they definitely didn't seem like they loved David. They were... a little fearful and concerned about what he could do. So
and
they were afraid of him.
And he was also providing for him, so it was kind of that.
Can I also add in that, like, I actually also agree that I think this episode, for me viewing it from a video game standpoint, I think would have been better played as a game. I think it would have made more sense because, like, especially when it comes to how freaking quickly Joel recovers from being brutally stabbed and having an infection. She just... It
did not feel that fast in the game.
She injects him with antibiotics or whatever, and he's healed. It feels like hours later. It's like... I feel like into the game, it probably, like you said, makes it feel as though there has to be a day or two at least go by, In the show, it's just like, injection, I'm running, oh, Joel's up. You know what I mean? It's like... It's a bit abrupt. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but then
I agree.
I agree with that to a point, but then when there's something going on and it's like, people are coming in, what are you going to do? Just going to lay there? Like, realistically, like...
Oh, well, you have no choice.
He didn't just lay there. Like, within the span of an hour,
he was already
like,
running
good to
around.
go.
Yeah,
it wasn't like he was, like, barely taking these guys out. He, like, took those guys out. Mm-hmm. So, I feel like that would have been a harder ask going from... being completely laid out for who knows how long with infected whatever. Like, I think Chaz is on the money there. That felt a little rushed.
It definitely feels like you said rushed, but like you definitely start to see the like incremental like, okay, there's only one episode left. You got to start.
Yeah, they've done this already. Like, they've truncated time. Like, even the prior episode where they got to the college after leaving Tommy's town, that was a much longer stretch, and they made that feel like it all happened within a day of itself. And in the game, there was like a whole trek. There was all these other things that happened. So they're definitely doing stuff to shorten the time frame, which is fair. I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't be doing that, but this felt quick. And I'll back up in a minute, but in the game, like, Ellie gets captured. I don't believe this was the case. I don't feel like they found Joel, period. Like, they got Ellie, took her, went back, and then you cut to just Joel waking up at some point in the basement. So there's like an undetermined amount of time there. Maybe it was a day, maybe it was X amount of hours, but it felt a lot more natural. Like he had recovered from the antibiotics taking their effect, and then he got up and it's like, "Where's Ellie? I gotta find Ellie." And that's when they get into him finding people and interrogating him, etc. So there was a gap there. Or at least the time felt more natural.
Okay. I got nothing else to say to that. You're right.
No, sorry. The something froze on my computer. I was making sure we're still good. Okay.
No, okay.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why I was zoned out because I'm like, we're good.
Yeah, I thought your brain
I thought
like loading.
No.
I thought you were on your phone looking for new news.
Yeah. I was
Not listening. It's like, oh,
I was in a Marvel Snap round.
By playing me.
But yeah, I agree with what you guys were saying. Like it's crazy. Like I actually feel I on a podcast I was listening to, they were actually saying that like they felt this episode should have been a two-parter, and I kind of agree. I think that if they would have split it into two, they would have made the passing of time of him recovering make a little more sense. Whereas, I mean, I said it already, but it feels like he's just like inject. Hulk smash.
And that's kind of how the game did it. And this was one thing when I was like, how are they going to fit all this into 9 episodes? Think about where we were just a couple episodes ago. I mean, it clicked pretty quick. They were going to have to shove this all into one episode, but the game made it feel like 2 halves. You had this whole first half where Ellie's kind of taking the reins, taking care of Joel, and then meets David, and then it kind of cuts at getting captured. Then there's a whole second half of Joel making his way to Ellie, Ellie trying to escape, taking down Dave. Like, it felt like 2 different halves. They definitely shoved it all together here, which I get why, but I think the timing of that in the game felt better to me.
No. Or good.
No, I'll wait till you guys are kind of done giving your thoughts, and I want to back up and give you the gamer's perspective, or someone who's played the game before.
The gamer.
Well, bad phrasing, but someone coming from someone who's played the game, kind of how I took that episode. But
I don't know. Just the only other thing I have to say is like I really appreciated and really enjoyed like when Joel gets healed up and can defend himself. Like I kind of loved seeing his like brutality with those 2 guys in the house, where you kind of see that like stop saying like where when you see Joel. When he doesn't have Ellie around, you can see that he's not like tethered down to try and stay or to try and like seem like a normal person. And when he does,
a glimpse of old Joel.
It's a glimpse of like because we've said it before, but around Ellie he tries to like make her feel like a kid or treat her like in the before time, and it's like now when she's not there, all he can think about is trying to save her, and it's just like...
Well, she's kind of bringing back his humanity a little bit, right? And now, when he's faced with losing that last little bit of himself, basically losing his daughter again, he snaps back into the Joel that's been trying to survive now for the past 20 years. So, yeah, it's definitely a big juxtaposition to that, where you can see that kind of take over again without Ellie there to rein him down.
And I like that, it's like, all right, I'm gonna want you to point to a point. If you don't point at the same point, I'm gonna kill your buddy. And his point kills the friend, and then he goes back to the other guy, and he's like, "No, I told you the right point." And he's like, "I believe you." And he like stabs him in the face. It was pretty awesome.
That's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of thing to do.
I believe you.
It's like, I believe you, dead.
Yep.
Okay, now you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can allow. All right.
Take it away.
Go ahead.
I will say, this was still... Yeah, I know. It was still a good episode. I don't want to say that it wasn't. Even if you remove all the game reference aspect out of it, it was a good episode.
I thought it was a great episode. This might be my favorite so far. It's one of the better ones.
I just think the game handled it a lot better. And there's two big things. And you mentioned it. This is the first time in the game you take control of Ellie. And it's actually this big surprise. Like, you can't really get that same feel inside of the show because you don't control anybody, right? You're watching Joel, you're watching Ellie, so there is no control aspect of it. But in the game, it basically, you see Joel laid out, and Ellie's like, oh no, what am I going to do? And then all of a sudden it cuts to like some animal running in the forest, and he gets shot down. And what you're thinking as the player is, okay, Joel's healed, he's hunting, blah, blah, blah. And then it flips to show that you're Ellie hunting. And then you have this whole segment where you're Ellie trying to gather food, do this, get back to Joel. So it makes it feel like a good amount of time has passed, and Ellie's been taking care of Joel the entire time. So the whole focus of the game shifts around right there. So that was lost in the show. You got a little bit of it just because you spent more time with Ellie on her own, but it didn't have the same weight. And the other big change was David. Like, here's my issue with him from the show. I mean, he was played really well. He was definitely, bad dude, imposing dude. But he almost came across like Snidely Whiplash, mustache twirling, I'm evil bad guy. Like, there was very little there as far as, like, subtle cues of any kind of, like, humanity. When he was just bad, right? He had bad motivations from the start, was bad the whole time.
He's a cultist, he's a pedophile, he's a cannibal.
They gave any rationale he gives for, like, oh, I'm trying to protect people or provide, like, that's thrown out the window pretty quick. He's like, yeah, I'm not really doing that. I'm just a violent guy who wants to be in control. But, like, there's no premise that he has any... I don't know.
He has like no standing. He has like no ethical standing or anything,
or to justify what he's doing. Like, some people, they do evil things because they think they're doing what's right. Like, the whole Thanos thing. Like, Thanos did objectively a bad thing, but he had a rationale to justify his evil acts that tried to make it morally gray. Right? There's none of that here. They just make David bad guy from the beginning. In the game, I mean, he's a bad guy, but it's for once a slower burn. And there's more of a justification to it. So the whole cult leader thing isn't really there. In fact, you don't get any of that stuff with the town beforehand. And I'm trying to debate if I liked that. Like, when you meet David, it just starts with him in the woods with James trying to hunt. So you're not sure, you're not trusting of the guy, but you find these guys, he comes across as a potential...
Is there the same connection where Joel kills their buddy or one of their people? That connection's not there? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, you have that whole... there's a battle or fight at the college, and then
but none of them
Joel
were attached to David or nothing?
Yeah, I'm not even sure if they were from that town, or if they were just, like, ex-Fedra, Firefly. I really don't remember who they were. But as far as I recall in the game, there's no connection there. So I think it's interesting that the game made that connection. I mean, it definitely made... the whole thing with, oh, you killed this other girl's dad, and they try to make that connection then to, I don't know. It's interesting. I didn't really like it as much. Maybe that connection was there and I missed it, but I think the slow burn you have with David in the game makes you think maybe this really is a good guy. Like, you always have that feeling in the back of your mind.
Well, that's what I was saying. I had heard people say he was more convincing in the game. Like, he was a very, like... He gets along with Ellie.
He's not going to be good. Like, even in the game, you're like, okay, I know this is going to end badly, but you're on the edge a little more the whole time. You're like, well, maybe. But the show doesn't have any subtlety to it. It's like, David is bad. So then when you have those interactions with Ellie from the beginning, you're already like, no, stay away from him. He's bad. Like, I don't know. It came across way too strong for me. You lose that subtlety. And I said the cult leader thing wasn't there. So I think that extra level of evilness just weighed down David a little too much. Like, they still had the cannibalistic aspect of it, but I think it almost played more favorably in the game because they could justify it as, yeah, we were just trying to survive. Still terrible thing, but without the extra aspect of, oh no, I chopped up your dead dad and fed it to you. Like, that's just like straight up, like, man, it's a whole nother level there. So I liked the game's subtlety. I liked the approach it took. The pacing of it was better. It just felt better in the game. As I said, this was not a bad episode. Like, as you guys are obviously accounting for, it was a good episode of TV. And even though they went very Snidely Whiplash with them, just straight up evil dude, it was fine. I mean, maybe they didn't want to play the ambiguous nature of it just to kind of push things along a little bit. But the game definitely gave you more to think about, more to feel out a little bit. And there's even an article I read with Nolan North, who voiced David in the game, where when he was playing the character, he had a more sympathetic approach to David. Like, he never felt like he was necessarily a straight-up bad guy. I said he tried to have a rationale for what he was doing as that character, and almost related more to Joel in that way, as he was trying to be a protector or whatever, etc. Whereas that's just not what you got in the show. He was just, I am bad. There, the end.
I feel like I gotta ask...
I mean, I don't know about all that, because, like, in the beginning, like, you don't really get that feeling that much. Until, like, he goes, oh, well, go look for him and do what you want. And it's like, okay, what is going on here? Like, I didn't like he was trying in the beginning to be sympathetic, but not really.
Maybe I'll tell you. Maybe that is my knowledge bias, kind of forcing an understanding. Like I knew he was going to be bad, so when I saw him maybe in the game or in the show, maybe I jumped to that conclusion a little quicker. So maybe you're right. Maybe it
Yeah.
doesn't come across quite that way. But even just watching it, the way that they would hang on Dave and the way he was saying things, it had too much evil eeriness to it to me. Even if I hadn't have known that David's a bad guy, just the way they framed him, the way they set him up. Like, okay, let's be real. Whenever you've been in any kind of post-apocalyptic thing, and there's a guy reading from the Bible, you know he's going to end up being the bad guy. Just how they set it up as some evil cult leader. So,
Yeah.
even though I think you're right, they didn't outright say it at the beginning. They framed it. Yeah, this guy's going to be a problem.
I do agree. I, I I think David would have been more convincing if, like you said, if they hadn't have thrown the whole kitchen sink at his like characterization. It's like, why? Just the fact that he has every single type of evil aspect to me just made him seem like it's like just give him one or two. Just make him be a cannibal or something. Or I mean, I could see how in the game, if you remove the religious aspect, how it could seem. I don't know. It just seemed like they threw every evil trait onto him.
I kind of wish they just wouldn't have presented him prior to meeting Ellie. Like, I think if Ellie just would have stumbled across him in the woods and that was your first introduction, at least then you have no premise on who David is. Like, you can have your concerns about him. Like, that's how I had as the game. Like, he's probably a bad guy, but there's nothing pointing me one way or the other. Like, do you take this guy at face value? And in the game, he came across pretty convincing. I think there was even a moment where I like, okay, maybe this might actually work out, and then it doesn't. And even when it doesn't feel like it doesn't just yet. If that makes sense. Like there's still like some hope. Like okay, maybe there's still a route here. Like he never feels like he was fully evil until he's fully evil. If that makes sense. It was a slower burn, which I think paid off better in the game.
And I think like what makes it more less believable is the fact that he is kind of put at the forefront of this group. So he's like the leader. And I think the fact that he has so many evil traits, that makes it a little less believable that he could get away with so much. So he's like, he's a cult leader, he's pedophile, he's cannibal. It's like, come on, somebody would know about some of the stuff he was doing. And clearly Troy in the episode knew. I think Troy might have been the only one, or maybe his other group, the other guys in his posse or whatever. I will say another part that I did really like is you could clearly see that like Troy, or the character Troy plays, isn't like totally okay with everything, even though he's going along with it, because there's the scene where Troy is like, or David tells them not to kill Ellie when they find her, and you could clearly see that Troy is like really wants to kill her, and like,
all of them did, right? It's not like now I think that was kind of weird. Like this whole town's so devoted to David, but clearly there's a lot of people who aren't completely on board with David either. Like it sounds like his even close guys are like, I'm gonna do what I want to here, and I'm gonna take revenge when I want to.
But I just mean like it almost to me kind of came off as like Troy wanting to do like a mercy for her, because he knows the kind of stuff that like David does. He knows how David is, and it kind of came off
I don't know
as
if I caught that. Maybe
just the way Troy kind of like looks at him. I mean, I guess you could make the argument Troy just cared about the other guy that she killed so much.
I think it was more of that. Like he felt it was the right thing to kill her. Like she shouldn't get away for being involved in killing their friend.
I took it as a little bit of both. I don't know.
I mean, that's where you could probably read it. I'm not gonna say that isn't what they were going for there. I just felt like that was a moment where they were trying to show that there was some kind of dissonance with David's guys versus David's orders. Like they were clearly wanting to kind of do their own thing. And in the game, I don't feel like that was the case. I felt like they were all pretty loyal to David, because I think he was more convincing. As I said, like they were more backing of him as a leader, but it also was a smaller group. I think it wasn't this whole town, so that's changed the perspective too.
I think it's kind of funny how what's his name? The other dude, his friend.
Troy
I
Baker.
know. I just call him Troy.
Troy
Baker.
Baker's an actor. His name in the game was James, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So how he gave a rebuttal and goes, "So what? You're like doing God's bidding?" And then he's like, "That's kind of like the disloyalty all of a sudden. Like it's like a slight stop and then he looks at him, and he's just like staring at him like if he wants to say something to him. But he stepped on his toes when he did something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how there was some sort of like he. You're right. He doesn't. They didn't like what he was doing.
I'm not quite
like,
sure
at all.
why he never did turn on David, because like, I mean,
I felt like that was coming.
they
the
were
fact that
out.
they-
He's a much bigger person. He's much younger. They're alone out in the wilderness, and he knows what this guy has been doing the whole time. It's like he has.
Yeah, I think that's what made it feel odd to me. Like, if David, like, because David comes across so evil, and all these people are obviously not feeling David so much. I mean, the way he treated the people in the restaurant, they were pretty standoffish of him because he's slapping these girls around.
And the mother
And then,
clearly
yeah.
looks at David like she knows possibly what David's been doing to some of the girls or something.
So it makes it seem less believable, right, that there hasn't been some revolt or they're leaning towards this direction if he's that evil. Like, in the game, he came across more sympathetic, more believable. He was still bad. I mean, hands down, he was still a bad guy, but it made more sense that he even could be in charge of a group or, you know, a whole town or what have you. So, I don't know. As it, this was a good episode. It wasn't that it was played poorly or anything. They just went really heavy on David being evil, and I think a little more subtlety probably could have made this even better.
I think this, now for me, I would say, I'd have to think if this is my favorite episode so far, because I don't think it is, but it's close. I would say I loved episode 1. Episode 1 was really good. And then which one was the one with the Sam and his brother?
Episode
4.
5.
5 or
Episode 4, I
6?
thought.
Well,
That
3
was
was the one with the gay couple, and then the other one was episode 4.
Okay. Yeah, it was
So that's
5.
6. No, 5. Yeah.
It
I
would
think
have been 5.
I think that
Okay, so it is 5, yeah.
I would say 1, 5, and 8. So I don't know. One of those is probably one of my favorite.
I think the finale is going to be the best episode. Just knowing what's coming. Like, it's the biggest moment in the whole game, for obvious reasons. I mean, it's the finale, but, man, there's some big moments that are coming that... Like, do you guys know the ending? We don't have to talk about
I
it
know
now, but do you know
I know
the
what
ending?
happens at the very end, but I don't know some of the stuff before that.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything. That's going to be a conversation for next week. And I am
Are we
very
gonna
curious how
Are we gonna get to
closely
that point? They
Yeah.
have like an hour and a half.
they can do it.
Okay.
They've done all the big stuff. Like, even in the game, like after the David stuff, things happen pretty quick because there's really not too many big things. There's a few moments, and then there's a big event that kind of happens, and all of it can be done within. Yeah, I mean, I think this will be a longer episode. I hope they're going to want to take their time
This
and
should
let
be
a few
it should
things
be a
kind of
two, it should be a
marinate.
2-hour episode. I think it should be.
I don't know if it needs 2 hours. Just knowing what's coming up. I'm trying to think if there's anything that would warrant that much time. Because like the gameplay aspect of it that would have stretched things out is not relevant because it's a show. And I've already seen how they've kind of cut out gameplay in portions and replaced it with like time skips or just cut the sections all together. So I think an hour and a half is probably fine. I think if they go too far, it's going to drag it too much. Because I'll be real, there aren't too many major like events that happen. There's a few character moments that are really important that happen within this last episode or time frame, and there's one really big thing that happens, if that makes sense. So I don't know. It's gonna be a big episode. I'm very curious how closely they stick to the game.
I know how the game's supposed to end. I'm gonna go on a limb. I'm gonna say they mess it up. I think that I think they're gonna kill Joel in the next episode. I think they're gonna move the plans forward.
You mean skipping? I mean, okay. I don't know how far we want to talk here. Like, are you talking about as they go into like the second game, or no? They can't. They really can't. Like, if they went that far in one episode, they can't. I'm really hesitant to talk about it because I know we're not there yet, and especially for Metal's sake, I really can't go into detail here. But the biggest moment of both games and anything Last of Us related is the end of the first game. For them to soften that or overshadow it with anything that could be coming up in the second game, that would ruin it. And I can't imagine they would do that because I think everybody understands what this whole game is about, and it's this moment that's about to come up.
They did it with
and if
they did it with the Game of Thrones HBO.
that was because it wasn't written. Like, they didn't have anything to really reference. Like, they kind of just did their own thing there. Like, this, for the most part, this whole show has been following the game, not to a T, but pretty darn close.
I've been beaten down so much by TV shows. I'm expecting.
I am confident to say that will not happen. Like, maybe you're just too pessimistic about it and you're worried, but I'm not saying they're going to stick the landing 100%. I mean, I'm really hoping they will. I feel pretty good about that. They're not going to go past the ending of the first game. Because also, the ending, or if the second game recontextualizes the whole first game. To lose that, no.
Supposedly the second game is 5 years later anyway, so it's like they can't really do that.
Yeah, like you can't have the time skip either. Like it's not like right after the first game, the second game happened.
Sorry to ruin your life, Chaz.
No,
that's what they were saying.
I hope what's happening, what I'm saying doesn't happen. I'm just saying.
I mean,
I've seen enough shows.
This isn't gonna be that. Like, I feel confident in having no involvement with the creation of the show to tell you that is not what's going to happen.
We're not going to see Master Chief butt. We're not going to...
Oh, we could see that.
Like, if they decide to really not use, Bella Ramsey for the next one because it's too
They're
later?
Not going to, because it's going to be... sure, they'll get a new actor.
Which makes no sense because she's already old enough anyway.
Yeah, she's already in her 20s.
No, they need someone.
I think they probably need somebody else. So.
Because there needs to be, like, a physical difference in the way Ellie looks going to the next game. And I mean, I think it kind of stinks that Bella Ramsey is one of these actresses who will probably perpetually always look like a kid. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they can use her in the next game. There's no way to make her up enough. I think
she's like 23 or 22. She's like already like
just
as tall as she's gonna get.
It's
the same thing with the one girl from Game of Thrones. I can't remember the actor. Macy Williams. She's like perpetually a small time.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything to worry about. I think this next episode is going to wrap up the game at the end of the first game. Nothing Game 2 related. Not only do I think that would not be a smart decision, it also just I don't think can physically or feasibly work. Now I think there'll be some little references that maybe the first game didn't have to the second game, because there's connections that don't really come into play until you play the second game, and it kind of recontextualizes that first ending. So I think you're going to see some Easter eggs that will allude to that, but it's not going to go there. I mean, where it's going to end the way the first game ended. It has to.
I think Joel is going to choke on food and die at the end of the episode.
Yep. He's going to die of COVID at the end.
He survived the clickers, but he couldn't.
That's gonna be the whole point of this whole thing. The real enemy the whole time was COVID. It's still around.
Darn you. All right, everyone. Well, I guess that wraps up episodes 7 and 8. If you don't know, next week, Monday or Tuesday after the next episode, we are thinking about doing a podcast episode, or just a separate video, just kind of covering the finale by itself. Kind of we feel like we've enjoyed the show, that it's deserving of its own little, maybe 45-minute, hour-long conversation.
Question. I don't know if you guys are up for it. We could talk about it. So the show airs, 9 p.m. Sunday? Mm-hmm. Is that right? Would you guys be up for doing it right after? Staying up late Sunday night and talking for an hour on the whole thing?
I'll let you know.
Okay. Let us know. If not, we can try to do it Monday or Tuesday. Oh, well, if you're driving, that kind of defeats the whole thing. But
probably do it Monday.
Yeah, I'd be down. But yeah, so we can kind of get our thoughts and opinions out there. I have a feeling we're going to go on for quite a bit, or Phoenix will at least. So, I don't know. That wraps up our the EnteR ChatZ MaN Podcast.